The Greek debt crisis explained. So first, a little history. The Eurozone and the European Union, an immensely complicated system beyond the scope of this video, but this is a very basic explanation. There's a group of countries in Europe, some are part of the European Union but don't use the currency the euro, and some use the euro but aren't part of the European Union. The countries that use the euro, regardless of European Union membership, are part of an economic area called the Eurozone. In June of 2000, the Greeks joined the European Union and the Eurozone. They did this by totally telling the truth about totally true facts about their totally stable economy. But when the other countries in the Eurozone were asked by Greece, "Can I join your European club?" they went, "Sure, fine." The Eurozone like a chain, and as the saying goes, it's only as strong as its weakest link. So, in the chain of the Eurozone, if your Greek friend is doing poorly, pun intended, you should help him to help yourself. You give him a stern German talking to and tell him to spend the money you're going to give him wisely. He says, "Sure thing," and then goes on his way. But by the end of 2009, as a result of a combination of international and local factors, the Greek economy faced its most severe crisis since the restoration of democracy in 1974. The Greek government revised its deficit from an estimated 6% to 12.7% of its gross domestic product, or GDP. What is GDP? The GDP is the monetary value of all the finished goods and services produced within a country's borders in a specific time period, usually 1 year. So if I had the Republic of BA and we produced a single chair a year that was worth $100, we would have a $100 GDP. Anyway, in early 2010 it was revealed that through the assistance of major US banks, financial products were developed which enabled the governments of Greece, Italy, and many other European countries to hide their borrowing. Not good. Dozens of similar agreements were concluded across Europe whereby banks supplied cash in advance in exchange for future payments by the governments involved. In turn, the liabilities of the involved countries were kept off the books. How were they kept off the books? The credits given to Greece and other European governments were disguised as swaps and consequently did not get registered as debt. These conditions had enabled Greece, as well as many other European countries, to spend well beyond their means. All the while, they maintained the deficit targets required by the European Union. On the 15th of November 2010, the EU statistics body, Eurostat, revised the public finance and debt figure for Greece to 15.4% of its GDP, making it the biggest deficit as a percentage of GDP among EU member nations. In 2011, it became apparent that the first bailout given to Greece would be insufficient, and a second bailout amounting to 130 billion euros was agreed to in 2012. This was subject to strict conditions, including but not limited to financial reforms and further austerity measures. So if Greece has so much money, why aren't things all good now? The money itself was supposed to help Greece buy time to stabilize its finances and quell market fears that the EU itself could break up. While it has helped a little, Greece's economic problems haven't gone away by a long shot. The economy has shrunk by a quarter in 5 years, and unemployment is above 25%. The bailout money mainly goes towards paying off Greece's international loans rather than making its way into the economy. The government still has a staggering debt load that it cannot begin to pay down unless a recovery takes hold. In early 2015, despite tensions, more bailout and austerity measures were talked about, and those talks dragged on very slowly. Finally, on July 13, 2015, after 17 hours of negotiations were concluded, an agreement was reached. The agreement was complicated, but here are a few of the main points. The Greek parliament must immediately adopt laws to reform key parts of its economy. A commitment to liberalize labor markets, privatize the electricity network, and extend shop opening hours. The Eurozone agrees, in principle, to start negotiations on a loan package for Greece worth 82 billion to 86 billion euros. This loan will come mainly from the European Stability Mechanism, but the International Monetary Fund will also be asked to make a contribution later on. These talks are still being settled, and many things may change, so we can only wait and see how the most recent Greek tragedy unfolds.